Welcome back to the pod. Welcome back to the channel. I am very honored to have Philip here with me today to talk some Orlando Magic ball. How are we doing today?
Always good to talk after a win. Better than talking after a loss. So can't complain too much about things.
Yeah, very much so. You look at the record, 5-4. It's not how we expected to get to 5-4, but I think if we to start the season, we look at the schedule and people ask us, you could play the 9 games out, or you can start 5-4. You would take the 5-4, but hindsight is you're a little bit frustrated because of the 3 games you blew. Am I right about that?
I think so. And look, you can't like look at those as sure wins. There definitely been some hiccups, there definitely been some problems, and there are games that the Magic have won that they probably shouldn't have won. Yes, they kind of blew the lead against Utah, but they came back and rallied to win that thing. And so you just have to realize that this is a young team. They're still prone to mistakes. They're still learning how to win on a night in, night out basis. And we're going through some of those growing pains, but it definitely, I think the most encouraging part is, despite how good we think the Magic are starting, we also, I think this is the team too, understand that this team's going to get a lot better. There's still a lot of places this team can get better. And so the floor of where this team is standing is a lot higher than it was last year. And I think that's really, really exciting to see. And we've got 74, 73 more of these things to go to get to that spot.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think also considering the injuries we're facing, it's very high encouragement. We beat the Lakers, we beat the Bucks while missing Wendell Carter. And as good as Goga has been so far to start the year, I really do miss Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter is very much missed on this team, and you've said it before that you can really pencil in Wendell Carter to miss 20 to 25 games. But this was a freak injury, so it's like hopefully it's not where we're also going to see like the maintenance issue where it's like a knee injury later on through the year. Hopefully this is it. But very encouraged of what Mo Wagner has been able to do, what Anthony Black has been able to do, well, with Markelle missing time. But even without the injuries, there are a couple of warning signs I've seen or concerns where it's like the Magic probably have better chance to win games that they've lost if those concerns weren't there. And we've seen Paulo bounce back from one of those concerns we've had early in the year. Markelle Fultz is one of them where he's I kind of want to say he's like reverted to what he played in his first year with us, where he's not willing to shoot the shots he was willing to shoot the last couple of years. To end the year last year, he said it. Sometimes you have to have a screw it like attitude where he was pulling up with like a little bit changed form, but now he's passing up wide open threes. So I don't know if it has to do with his injury and his left knee, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely really tough to say. The Magic, at least publicly, are saying that this knee tendonitis thing is something that just kind of sprung up. It wasn't something that was lingering, that was lasting. It just kind of happened. I am a little bit skeptical of that. Like maybe it is. I'm not a doctor, but it definitely feels like the way Markelle is playing, that he's kind of reverted back to what's comfortable. Like and I'm a believer in some respects that, if you're a bad shooter, you have to shoot. Like I think Markelle still has to shoot to keep the defenses honest. But if you're not comfortable, if it doesn't feel right, go make a play that feels right. And Markelle's really good in the mid-range. He's very comfortable there. He's very comfortable shooting off the dribble. And so even if he's driving into a more contested two, it's a shot he can make. And so I'm not so against it, but in this league, you can, and especially with the lack of shooting the Magic have in that starting group, you cannot pass open shots. Like even if you're missing, it makes the defense stay a step or a half step closer to you. And that could be the space Paolo needs. I think the frustrating thing that a lot of Magic fans have seen and felt is, especially late in games, teams just pack the paint. Like all 5 guys have a foot in the paint. They're denying any drives to the basket. And that just makes it really hard to get quality shots to keep these teams at bay. The Magic lost to the Lakers because they couldn't get shots in the paint at the rim late in games. The Magic lost to the Hawks the other night because at the end of the game, the Magic really struggled to get in the paint and even turn the ball over, just trying to force their way in because teams know the Magic aren't shooting. They're waiting too long to execute their offense. It's been a struggle. And, you know, even now, like we're seeing teams zone the Magic fairly regularly. Like teams are really testing the Magic's ability to shoot. And, you know, it's not all on Markelle Fultz, obviously, but there was definitely an expectation that, okay, you know, we may not ever see Washington Markelle Fultz, but we saw the closest we were getting to him. And so far this season, we really haven't seen even that step and burst in energy that he had to end last season.
Yeah, that's completely fair. And that's the Markelle Fultz I thought at least we would be getting this year, because we saw against Utah, he hit that step back three late in he was just hitting like in transition pull up three. So I thought having a whole other summer where he would be healthy, that we would see a more comfortable Fultz in taking those shots. And I think that's what we all expected for this offense, especially around Paulo and Franz. That if we had that version of Marco that was willing to shoot, if I don't care if you miss, so be it, but take them. And that's how you keep defense awesome. That's how you're able to spread out the floor. But with that being said, with him missing time, Anthony Black has been very, very good. And that's a question. What do you do once Gary Harris comes back? Because I don't think you can run 11 man. I think you're stuck between 9 and 10. So where would you go?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. And I don't know if I have a good answer for it, because, you know, I think generally people have said, well, take Joe Ingles out of the rotation. It was like Joe Ingles has actually been really helpful for this team too. Like I know he's not shooting the ball as well as we'd like him to shoot it. And I think that is an important part of his game, but he passes the ball so well. He's a coach on the floor. Like you see him even during games directing traffic or like telling guy, you know, like coaching on the sideline. Like he's really, really, really important for this team. And so I agree. I think Anthony Black has to play. I think he has to be on the floor. He's too good and doing too many good things to not be on the floor. But how you fit him into the rotation is definitely going to be a challenge, because you need Gary Harris shooting too. He shot the ball really well to start the year. And while he may not give you kind of the playmaking dynamic as well, but this is a good problem to have. Like, you know, maybe Black sits, maybe they go by, you know, every couple games that Black gets to play, Black plays, or so someone sits out, but Black has to play. Like he is too good to leave on the bench. And that's a credit to him for being ready to go.
Yeah. And I think it really depends on Anthony Black's progression and in my opinion, his playmaking. Because for as much as people want to complain about Joe Ingles shooting, which I think we'll see the norm eventually where he'll start knocking down shots, that's not necessarily the role Mosley has been playing. We've seen him as the ball handler most times, because that bench unit, especially with Gary Harris on the floor, he's become the spot-up shooter. Cole Anthony really isn't. He's a shot creator, more so creating shots for other people. So you have Joe Ingles in that playmaking role, because he's been a great passer. And when you have that unit, you're not getting the spot up shots that Joe Ingles had in Utah or Milwaukee last year. You have more of having Joe Ingles being, I guess, like the point forward. And if Anthony Black is able to hit threes, or if he's able to be a secondary playmaker, then we can have more spot up opportunities for Joe Ingles.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and I think it's a credit to the Magic. I think it's a credit to Black too. He stays within his lane. Like he's not trying to do too much. He's not trying to force action. Like I want him to be a little bit more aggressive, attacking off the dribble and show that playmaking that he has. But, you know, he knows he's in there to play a very specific role and play a very, very specific kind of game. And he hasn't, you know, expanded his game beyond that. And he hasn't tried to expand his game beyond that, which I think is a good thing for a rookie. So we're going to, you know, I think that's how you do with rookies. You give them a narrow role to start things off, and then you slowly expand it as they get more comfortable and they get better. And I think we'll see that happen with Black here very soon.
Yeah. And then Jonathan Isaac has been, to me, he's been very good to start off this year. His efficiency isn't there, but credit to what Steve Clifford said before, players need time to get into rhythm. And Jonathan Isaac was never going to get into rhythm playing 4 minutes per half, but now 17 minutes, almost 16, 17 minutes per game, the last couple, especially with him closing games, I think Isaac will eventually. We saw last year where he has this potential to be a pretty good shooter from beyond the arc, and especially with him closing games now, credit to Mose for going that direction. I think Isaac might end up towards the end of the year playing 20, 25 minutes per game, being that six man.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to know. Like, JI still has to get his feet under him, and it looks like he's still getting comfortable with the kind of day-to-day grind of the NBA. And I think that's just a very underrated thing that everyone has to realize. Like, he's missed 3 years. Like, he's been out for a long time, and the NBA schedule is grueling. So I get the Magic being safe with him and being a little bit more cautious with him. But he's like, just from a playing perspective, like, he very much is still getting comfortable. And that's what this part of the season's for. He's looked good defensively. He hasn't missed a beat there. Offensively, it's just getting his feet under him, and he's slowly getting there. He's having better scoring performances. He's getting to the line a little bit more. I know he had a big free throw game on Saturday against Milwaukee. The progression is there, and I know everyone hates it because we all want to win now. So much of this team is still about patience and letting things develop, letting players learn from mistakes, get better and grow as we get closer to game 82. We're at game 9. We're 9 games into this thing. There's still a long way to go before the Magic get where they ultimately want to be.
Yeah, I agree. And then I also wanted to ask your opinion on Jett Howard, because we've seen a lot of people clamoring for Jett to play. We've seen Caleb Houston pick up minutes, Chuma Okeke, and first half recently. What do you think is going with Jett? Do you think he could probably be struggling in practice, or he's just not ready?
I think it's, who knows? I think that, we knew entering the draft process that Jett's defense wasn't particularly strong. Like, that was a big criticism of him at his time in Michigan. Jeff Weltman on draft night tried to blame that on the injury. And, I remember sitting there hearing Jeff say that, and I will usually take Jeff at his word, but I remember sitting there saying that. It's just like, I don't know about that one, Jeff. You're doing a lot of somersaulting there. So, I think there's definitely a learning curve with Jett. And look, with any coach, it's about trust. When you're a young player and you're on a team that is trying to win, like the Magic are trying to win. They're not trying to just develop guys. They want to win. You've got to establish trust with your coach. And the way you establish trust with Jamal Mosley, with the direction he wants this team to go, is he wants them to defend. It's not like the Magic don't have other shooters, that he would supplant. Like, Caleb Houston is a good shooter. Joe Ingles, Gary Harris are good shooters. So who are you taking out of the rotation to put Jett Howard in? And what does he bring that those players don't? And that's ultimately the question. Jamal Mosley trusts Gary Harris to defend. He trusts Joe Ingles to defend. Caleb Houston's another guy that they drafted. They gave him a chance. And, we could debate a little bit maybe how he fared in that chance against Dallas, but he's someone that has built up a year of trust with this front office. Jett is still building that trust, and he's got to show that in practice before he gets on the floor. And we just don't know what it is. The issue is, too, the Magic have a lot of depth at that spot, particularly. And, it's, again, who's he taking out? If you're adding one player to the rotation, who are you taking out? And that's the question. And that's kind of the logjam that is this Magic roster right now.
Yeah. And I will say, I don't want to use the word happy, but like, I'm satisfied with not giving either rookie to start the year minutes, because that just shows that we're not giving rookies minutes all because they were a lottery pick. It has to be earned. And I think that's a lot of credit to Mosley. And I think Mosley has done a great job this year, regardless of maybe he can work on having sets to especially late in games, of trying to get a shot for your best players. But I think overall Mosley has done a pretty good job this year.
Yeah, and I think people have to remember, yes, this is a season that's about some short-term games. The Magic are trying to make the playoffs, trying to make the play, and they're trying to do all that stuff. But this is still a long-term project. Like, Jamal Mosley has been a long-term coach. The thing that I think he's done so good at is he's always kept the big picture in mind. Like, what matters is the bigger picture and what this team is trying to become. And I think that's still the case today. Yes, I'd like to see him maybe change up his play calling a little bit late in games, maybe find a way to calm guys down a little bit, get them back locked in defensively late in games. But that's also stuff you got to experience and stuff that players have to experience. So if he's willing to stomach some mistakes now, it's the hope that they'll learn the lesson for March, April, maybe May, who knows, that they'll be ready when that time comes. So there's going to have to be a shift at some point where Mosley cares more about the short term than the long term. But at this stage of the season, he's very good at keeping the big picture, the big thing, the main thing. And he has done a very good job, I think, of understanding what's going to help this team win long term and what's going to help them achieve those goals in March and April, and allowing them to learn what that's going to take at this stage of the season.
Yeah, I think eventually, especially when it comes down the stretch to this end of the season, it's gonna have to be a lot more of a shorter leash, and I really hope by then some of these guys will be more comfortable. And it's gonna need consistency. As for young teams, that's the biggest issue, which is consistency. And I think that's why Cole Anthony in particular is probably the best suited for that 6-man role, because he could be very, very good in certain games, but then we saw against Milwaukee, he didn't really have it going. But that threat as a 6-man, I think, is probably why his best role is. So do you have any, I guess, opinions, I would say, in like the way these rotations should be staggered, or what other like play groups that you would like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting to see how long he goes with the starters, and they're not platooning as much as they were earlier in the season and certainly in the preseason, but it still feels like there are kind of platoons. There are like 5-man groups that play together. He's been playing Paolo 9-10 straight minutes to start the game, which I think is interesting. I've almost kind of thought it might be worth it to flip Paolo and Franz's role a little bit and play Paolo with the second unit, at least in the first half, to give him more shooting around him, where Franz is a good shooter, so he may not need the same kind of spacing. But like Paolo might need Gary. I'd love to see Paolo play more with Joe Ingles, which they've started to do a little bit more, to play with the Gary Harris, to play with the Cole Anthony, to allow him more driving lane, because there's just more shooting threats on the floor. Mo Wagner's a decent shooter instead of Goga Batadze, who, is probably not going to score much, outside of 10 feet. I think that's interesting. I love seeing Jonathan Isaac playing center to close these games. I think that gives the Magic a really, the ability to play some 5 out, to switch all 5 positions on defense, which I think is an ideal for this team. It gives them just a lot more flexibility. I don't think we've seen, outside of those closing minutes, I don't think we've seen Isaac, Banchero, and Wagner on the floor together. I do think that is a lineup worth exploring a little bit more and trying to get to. But I also understand you have to do it very limited, because you got to make sure that they all get their rest and that you make sure that they're all on the floor. I mean, essentially, I think that the Magic have to make sure that one of Paolo or Franz are on the floor at all times. With Wendell out, with Markelle in and out of the lineup, those are your 2 engines. Those are the 2 guys kind of driving the bus. And while I think those bench lineups with Cole and Joe Ingles as kind of the point guard can survive a little bit, without those 2, you still need kind of the straw that stirs the drink. And both Paolo and Franz are excellent playmakers. And I think the Magic have done a really good job putting the ball in their hands to make those plays. And I think that's another area this team will continue to explore, is essentially those 2 as your point guards. As long as those defensive principles are fine, which they've been, the Magic can really begin to experiment with lineups. And I hope that we'll get to see that a little bit more. But I think, Mosley's also smart enough to know, like, hey, let's establish some playing groups, let's establish some consistency, let this team grow, and then we can experiment with when matchups call for it.
Yeah, and I really like that point of swapping Paulo and Franz over, because if you do have Paulo more so than Franz playing with the second group, that allows someone like Joe Ingles to be able to play off the ball. And then we see the shooting that most people thought we were going to get coming into the season. But at the same time, we also expected some internal shooting progression we had. Paulo hasn't hit that stride yet, which is fine. Year 2, which is completely okay. We've seen him be a much better defender.
He's starting to hit more threes though lately. Like he's
right.
not like out there taking them there. He's not like doing pull-up threes or step back threes. I don't think that's part of his game yet.
Yeah.
But like ball swings to him, he's taking the shots. Like he's not like taking 3, 4, 5 threes a game, but it's not like he's passing up threes. Like he's taking them.
Yeah, you're right. Which I completely I love to see Paulo willing to take the three. I think last year we seen him a couple of times, especially where he struggled, just bulldoze into the rim and looking for foul rather than taking the open three, which I like that progression. But we've seen Paulo become a much better playmaker, a better defender, which was supposed his weakness coming out of coming out of college, which I love to see him make that defensive progression. Jalen Suggs though, after having the struggle to start the season, all of a sudden coming off screens, fading away threes, they're all falling. What have you seen out of Jalen thus far?
I think what I've seen out of Jalen is consistency of effort. Like, I'm not gonna say he's a consistent shooter yet, but what I love about Jalen, we talked about Markelle earlier, and how there's a hesitance to shoot. There is no hesitation to shoot from Jalen Suggs. And that's a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because if he's not making them, he's shooting 2 for 7 from 3, and that's a problem. If that. When he is making them, it's really good. But I love that it doesn't matter if he made or missed the previous shot. He is going to keep taking the shot. He's going to keep having confidence and faith in himself. And I think that's a really powerful thing. Now, he still has to make some better decision making. I think he's gotten better there with his decision making going to the basket, but he still gets a little over eager and excited, but the consistency of his effort is why he's in the starting lineup. We know what he can do defensively, and we know that he kind of sets the tone and the mood for this team on defense with his ability to get into the ball. His consistency of energy on offense too. I think that helps the team so much. Like, he's just always going, and it's always an engine. Like, his movement shooting is so much better than it was last year. And I think that's a really big thing for this team, is just, for a team that can struggle to shoot and has gotten frustrated with their lack of shooting, having a guy you could just sit there and say, oh, he doesn't care. He's going to keep shooting. He's going to keep having faith in himself. That goes a long way. And I think that does spread to the rest of the team. And I just, we talked about this with Anthony Black. You can't take Jalen Suggs off the floor. Like, he's too valuable and he's too good. He's too good at the things that he's good at to leave off the floor. And that's really exciting, because, he's bringing that same energy for every minute he's in the game. And I think that's just super valuable. That consistency of effort is just so impressive.
Yeah, and it really creates havoc on both ends of the floor, and that allows Orlando to get out in transition. And frankly, how I don't want to say chance, but how this offense has played so far this year, that's been their best looks. Being able to get trailing threes, being able to attack the rim and transition. But Jalen Suggs had, even on the defensive end as well, we've said Jonathan Isaac will hit a defensive team. Jalen Suggs will be right next to him, and probably at this rate will be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation throughout this year, and he's just been amazing overall. But when it comes, so we've seen this team blow a couple of leads this year, and it's been very frustrating to watch how the offense boggles down, where you had a lead to begin with in the fourth quarter for a reason. And you're not a fan of isolation play. So and then you have, because people ask for spacing, Anthony Black, he has shot the ball well so far, but teams are willing to let him shoot. Same thing with Jalen. Is there, what you say run through their offense, is there a specific play group that you would like to see to close out these games?
I mean, it's not, it's not necessarily a specific playing group. Like, look, the starting lineup still has a very positive net rating. Like, they're still winning their minutes. Essentially, like, what I look for is you need to make the defense work. Like, that's an isolation play lets the defense relax comparatively, because they're only focused on one guy. No one else is really doing anything. They might be spaced different places in the floor. The help side can load up on the one guy doing something and rotate on the pass. To me, it's giving the defense a break. It's essentially saying, we're going to run the clock out instead of trying to score points. And, I think, I'm not here saying like, oh, the Magic need to run an offense to get a quick three, or take a three or a contested shot with 14 seconds on the shot clock or early in the shot clock. I'm not saying that at all. When you're in these late game situations, you still need to be smart about the shots you take, And a 24-second shot clock violation turnover isn't the worst thing in the world because you are killing a lot of clock. Though what the Magic did, especially Thursday against Atlanta, was essentially let them off the hook. Essentially allow them to load their defense up against Paolo or load their defense up against someone and not have to work or adjust or change. It allowed them to put a foot in the paint, have everyone put a foot in the paint and guard them. And so I think what, and this is, I don't think it's just an Orlando issue. I think it's everyone late in games does this. I think what Orlando has to do better at is create a secondary action or run offense that at least makes the defense have to token cover something. You're trying to create space. So if you're not creating a secondary action that forces the defense to think or to try and do something to move a little bit, you're allowing them to just sit in the paint and dictate what shot you're taking. The Magic are a really good cutting team. They're really good at getting offensive rebounds. Put your guys in a position where there can be a mismatch, where there's a lane for you to get an offensive rebound and keep a possession alive and kill another 14 seconds and get another shot. That to me is, I think, the biggest thing for this Magic team is, they get tight. They're trying to be careful. They're concerned about blowing the lead too. But when you lose your aggression, that's when you lose games. That's when you give up these leads. Is when you aren't trying to keep playing the game. When you try to kill the clock, you're playing differently than when you're trying to score. And I think you have to still keep a mindset of trying to score. I will watch games, and when you get to about 3 minutes to go, I will say to myself, okay, the target, if you can get to 112 points or 110 points, the game's probably over. They mentioned on the broadcast Saturday, the Magic were knocking on the door of 110, and Jeff Turner said, if the Magic get to 110 most nights, they're probably going to win because their defense is so good. And look, Milwaukee probably wasn't coming back in that game, that the game was probably out of reach at that point. But that's kind of the mindset you need, where it's okay, if we could get 6 more points, and it's not that we have to force our way to it. We don't need to jack up a couple threes to get there. But if we get 6 more points, they're not going to be able to catch us, even if they execute perfectly against us. And that's that's kind of the mindset you need, is we have to hit this. We have to get to this number, or make it as hard as possible for them to get to that number before we do. And that, that's how I look at the end of games. I do like the Elam ending. I don't think it's coming to the NBA anytime soon, but you almost need that approach of okay, we've got to hit a target score more than try and get to zeros.
Yeah, that's completely fair, because we've seen this team so many times throughout already this season. Honestly, in some of the wins, we've lucked out. Against Utah specifically, we probably should have lost that game.
So the Magic are 2-3 in clutch situations this year. So clutch situation is game within 5 points, final 5 minutes. Magic are 2-3 in those situations. Their losses are Atlanta, the Lakers, and Dallas. Dallas, they were down by 3 or 4 with about 5. They were down 2 with 5.5 minutes to play. So that qualified. The 2 wins are Utah, where the Magic led by 8, I think, with about 5 minutes to play, and ended up giving up the lead and had to hit a game winner with 14 seconds left to win it. And the other game was Portland, where the Magic were up by, I think the Magic gave up only 6 points through the first 9 minutes of the quarter, got outscored 13-5 the rest of the way, only won that game by 5. Now, Portland never got closer than 5 points, but still very, very shaky at the end of the game. I think it says something too that the Magic have never, only the Dallas game was the only situation where they're playing from behind. The Magic have always been playing with a lead. And I think that's the part that's different for this team. They haven't played with a lead as often as they have. The Magic have led in the second half of every single game this season, I believe, except including the Clippers game. They've been in these games. They've led in the fourth quarter of every single game except for the Clippers game and the Mavericks game, if I'm not mistaken. So they've been in these games. It's not like they're out of these games, and they're typically playing from ahead, and learning how to manage and care for and grow a lead is one of the biggest challenges that this young group is facing right now.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a fair way to look at it, because having turnover after turnover after turnover, 4 shot we saw against Utah, Cole having to take a step back, which he airball, which allows teams to get easier baskets in. Against Atlanta, same thing. Instead of running an action for Paulo to get a mismatch, you let Paulo pound the ball for 18 seconds, then he has to create something. Against Milwaukee too, Paulo having and then throwing a pass, and then with 2 seconds left, he have to quickly either chuck up a three or essentially a 24 shot clock violation. And that's why I think Markel is very essential to any playing group that the Magic have, where he at least has something that Cole and Black don't have yet, having the ability to manage time, manage pace, and understand that we have to get to an action now, or we're going to keep seeing these games where Orlando essentially blows another lead. And I think that's probably the next step in this team's development.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think what Markel is really good at too. And Markel last year was one of the most clutch players in the league. Like he was very efficient in clutch situations. Like he rises to those moments. He's very good at getting into the paint and passing out. Like Paolo is getting better at that, but he's not great at it yet. Franz is getting better, but not great at it yet. Markel is really good at creating something, getting by his mind, collapsing a defense around him, and finding open players on interior passes, finding open players back at the 3-point line. He's just a great playmaker, and I do think that is something the Magic have been missing throughout the season.
All right. Yeah, and then as we reach to close up, do you have any like warning signs, or like either warning signs or signs that are positive that you've seen out of this team thus far?
I'll start with the positive. Last year the Magic gave up the second most 3-pointers in the league. This year they've given up the 8th fewest, or like they're in the top 10 and fewest 3-pointers given up. I think that is a huge growth for this team, because the 3-point math last year was just very difficult. The Magic were not a good 3-point shooting team. They gave up a lot. They defended the 3-point line well, but they gave up a lot of threes. And so inevitably there'd be a game where they had some bad 3-point luck. I think we've seen that less this year because the Magic have just been so much better at defending the 3-point line. The turnovers are still, I think, a really big concern. I think that's just something this team's going to battle all year. They're better at it than they were last year, but the Magic play and their pace has been picking up a little bit lately because of the opponents they've been playing. But the Magic like to play a lower possession game. So there's fewer possessions. And so the more you turn the ball over in a lower possession game, the fewer shots you're getting, the more opportunities the offense is getting to go against you. When the Magic have their set defense, they're tough to beat. Like they're not going to give up a lot of points in the half court. So anything that the Magic can do to reduce the number of transition opportunities for the other team, which again, the Magic have been good at not giving up fast break points, but they are also a team that just can't give away possessions. Like they have to get a shot. The football teams always say you want to end every possession with a kick. The Magic want to end every possession with a shot of some sort. And that, I think that's important.
All right. And then, so you said Mission 83.
Mission 83.
So with what you've seen so far, I don't know if maybe I'm just a little too optimistic as of right now. I can probably see this team fighting to completely just miss the play-in tournament completely, because especially how this Eastern Conference is falling out so far. Cleveland has gone off to a rough start. Atlanta has gotten off to better start than I believe they were going to. Miami's not playing particularly well, especially as Tyler Hero goes down. Have your expectations of this team changed through 9 games so far?
I mean, I think very clearly they're a play-in team. Like I think, I definitely thought there's always a chance that they could miss the play-in. I think the East is just very competitive and very close. We're in one of the tougher parts of the schedule right now. These next 7 games are going to be really, really tough. There's another really tough part coming in December. It's probably still too early to say that the Magic expectations have risen or changed or anything like that, but we have definitely seen that this team is capable. Like there are no moral victories with this group. This group expects to win. They should win games, and we will see how they grow and develop throughout this long, long season. There's still so many games to play, but the Magic have done the job they needed to do through these first 10 games or so and get off to a good start. There's an old saying about golf tournaments. You can't win the tournament in the first round, but you can lose it. Last year, the Magic lost the tournament in the first round. 5-20 was just impossible to recover from. This year, they've kept themselves in the race. All we got to do is all the Magic have to do is get to the All-Star break, because after the All-Star break, their schedule's set up for them to pick up a spot one way or the other. And so I think that they will certainly be in the race to take advantage of that when they get there.
Yeah, this first half of the schedule is really, really very tough. especially in December. But with that being said, I think these next couple stretch of games are very important. Brooklyn without Cameron Thomas, I think you have to get that one, and then you play Chicago back to back, which Chicago's having the Chicago problems already to start the
They're
year.
still dangerous though.
Yes.
Like Chicago, Toronto are great examples of teams who have struggled and have like very serious flaws, but they're veteran teams that know how to win, and they're still very dangerous. Like there are very few sure wins. Like, you know, even Washington could have a big shooting night and beat you. Like, there are very few sure wins for this Magic team. They're better. They're able to win games when they aren't playing at their absolute best. But there's still a lot of work to do. Let's not celebrate quite yet.
Yeah, you're not wrong, because you can't play down to your competition, because that's when someone like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Pascal Siakam will torch you through a whole night. But with that being said, thank you so much, Philip, for joining me. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of the season so far down below. See you guys next time.